Hello, welcome to the Cunning Plan podcast. I'm James Adam. This is the man that puts human in human resources, Paul Porter.
Thank you very much.
Paul is our HR master. How are you doing, Paul?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me on the podcast.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. As you know, this is What the Fox. This is the Cunning Plan podcast. We go through a variety of different subjects, whether they be marketing, business, those kind of things. And today, what we're going to be talking about is people. And it's not just about people, it's about businesses and about values and how you get the most out of people within a business and things like that. And Paul, we started working together, about 6 months ago, something like that, wasn't it? I think. And it all kind of came about from the fact that I'm pretty honest about the fact that I have not always seen the value in a business having values, excuse the pun. It kind of always seemed a little bit wishy-washy for me, and a bit of a kind of thing that I'd been in businesses where they were like, the muckety-mucks came in and said, right, these are our new values, this is our new vision statement, this is all, this is everything, here it is, away you go everyone, make sure you do everything according to these values. And it just always felt a bit empty, and they just tended to fall by the wayside pretty soon afterwards. And so I never, I started this business and I didn't really see any real benefit in doing that kind of thing. And I think it also because for me it's like it's my business, kind of my values, so I kind of feel like, well, we're going to always be that way because
of you,
because of me. And I think more fool me there really, that it quickly became apparent, well it didn't quickly become apparent, it eventually became apparent that as you grow and as there are more people, you suddenly find some of those people don't necessarily live the same values as you share. I mean, you must have seen that in a million times over, I imagine.
And I think there's a real trend for you. I'd go into a lot of businesses, and you make an assumption quite early on. You'll see the values up on the wall, and you'll see normally see these days like a pool table, an office dog, a hammock. They're usually sort of like tick boxes.
Staples.
Absolutely. So
we
kind of think.
We haven't even got a pool table.
No, we need one.
We've got a foosball table.
It's quite
no
cool.
Office dog though. That is a hard no on the office dog.
No dog.
No. Joe brought his dog in once when I was here, and then once I think when he thought I wasn't.
But you knew.
I was aware. I'm like always acutely aware of where all dogs are around me, and I don't like them.
So normally they're the ones we look at and think, right, okay, this is a kind of a people place. And it's kind of it's right in terms of the heart of what people do. So you normally see the values up on the wall. Looks great, but the real truth of it is how do you actually bring the values to life? So they're actually part of what you do, rather than just you say one thing but you actually do another. So you see it very often. But if the leadership team and the team don't actually live them values day by day, it's just a statement on the wall that looks pretty. Probably looks better for customers coming in. Clients, and it says this is what we do. So creative marketing agency. There's a message to be put out there. I think one of the things that were refreshing, whilst we had logos, no office dogs, but there was a want to bring values together and an understanding, and that was a great part where I joined you guys to start that journey, and where we are now is in a different place, a better place. So we're still on that journey of bringing it alive. But I think people really want a sense of being part of something more than just work. And
I think that was the thing that became apparent was, as I sort of mentioned before, that it seemed like it had got away from me a little bit in terms of what people, what we were doing and the quality of what we were doing and the people that were doing the things that we were doing. And that was when I really realised that this is why we need to have these values. And I think it's something that you said to me, that it was kind of, everything is based on this. You hire based on this. If you're going to fire, you fire based on this. Everybody is, has to live these values, because that's what makes us different from every other bazillion other agencies like us that are out there.
And absolutely, and that's the thing in terms of, especially with a small business, everybody has to be good at what they do. You can't carry anybody in an SME, you just can't do it. So everyone's got to be good, and that's kind of given. You expect people to be good at what they do, unless they wouldn't be here. What makes the businesses who really do drive and really do go to that next level is the values, and it is about how we do things, but more importantly, what we don't do. So I think we can probably touch on it later on in terms of how we came about the values at Cunning Plan. But you go in somewhere and someone will say something like we're transparent, but they won't tell people that the business is running out of cash in 6 months. That's not transparent. That's just that's, you say one thing but you do another. So I think it's really important, and I think the way to bring the values to start off with is to engage with the team. I've seen in organisations before where you come and say, your values look great, and then you start asking questions, how do they come about? And it's normally a leadership team has been away, they've had an offsite, someone's facilitated it from outside, they've come back and they've rolled the values out.
Been
to the masses.
Been playing in the park or on the swings, and they come up with
they
like
built
a
a
load
raft.
of values. Usually built a raft.
Been up a mountain, log cabin
thing.
usually involved. And there's some values, and then they just roll the values out. These are our values, and this is why. And
this is the thing for me, and I think that's why I have perhaps resisted it, is because of that kind of experience and this idea that, exactly as you said, that they're more like marketing messages than they are like something that's real. Transparency it's great in it to say, oh, it's super transparent. You're not transparent. I can almost guarantee it. Like nobody tells everything to everyone. Nobody tells their employees absolutely everything. Nobody tells their clients absolutely everything. You don't. You can't. It's not. You can't run a business like that. No shop you go to tells you how much I bought it for, how much it costs to ship it to me, and how much my rent is, and how much I'm selling it to you for, and therefore my margin is. You don't do that. They're not transparent, so don't pretend you are. And that is so it's those things that people think that they are saying because they think people like to hear it, when they're not really. It's not really real. No. So you can't live it because you didn't believe it at the start.
It doesn't mean anything. And then that's where you have the values are just a statement, and they're not actually part of what you do. So
and they fall down immediately, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And I think the values. You get a good point before, James. It's your business. You've been running the business. Beforehand, it was your personal values of how you what you believed and how you lived them values yourself. But that doesn't help grow a business. When you grow from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, plus to many numbers. It can't be one individual's value. It's got to be a group, and there's a group value why. And then we spoke about it earlier on in terms of when we started to work together. You end up in the point where you hire to the values as much as to the talent, but also you call people out on the values if they're not doing it, and that's really when it works. That's when it kind of becomes second nature rather than it being a forced approach. And I see that with some of the big organisations. They say one thing, but actually the reality of what you read and what it's like to work there are two totally different things. But I think it's quite interesting when we kind of got together. We had a bit different approach. So James got his Lego out.
Always end up with the Lego out. It comes. Any excuse.
I've never done Lego values before, but
that was it. Yeah, that was kind of that. I think it goes back to that thing that I didn't want it to be my values. Because I also recognise the fact that just because I think it's right doesn't mean it's right for the business. It's far better to and this Lego Serious Play is all about getting a hive mind, a group consensus between people. And there's no point creating a thing that ultimately wasn't going to be supported by the rest of the people that work here. I am one of the people, not not any more important than anybody else. So we did this year. We did a Lego Serious Play workshop, which really pinned down loads of different things and some really surprising stuff that people said was valuable to them that I wouldn't have predicted at all. There was stuff in there that was really, really surprising, and there was stuff in there that didn't feature at all. And that actually told me some stuff about the people that we had, and that some things that were incredibly important to me were not important to any of the people that were there. And that said, actually, do you know what? This business is missing that person that considers that to be a really, really important thing, because I do believe that's an important value. So we looked at this kind of landscape of all these different values and ultimately then kind of honed those down to 5 or 6 that we all agreed were important to the business, and that they could be something that we could all live by, and that if we did live by them, we'd be better. We'd do better work, and everything we did would be better because of it.
And I think that's where I kind of got involved with it. And it actually wasn't me part of the values workshop. It was you guys that drove it. I kind of came in when you'd done it, and it's kind of like, right, well, what do we do now? We've kind of got all these ideas. Everyone's kind of got their input in terms of what's important to them, what's important to how they work together. And then I think the next stage for us then was really, well, how do we now bring them alive?
And that's the HR part of it. I mean, you are an HR person.
Yes.
But I think that conjures an image sometimes of the person you get in when you're trying to sort of wiggle your way out of some sort of legal wranglings, or you put yourself into a bit of a muddle, or you're just trying to get your contracts right, or you're dealing with whatever, this, that, and the other. And we'd certainly had HR people before would help with hiring and different bits and pieces like that. But for me, it was very much when we started working together, it was really much more about how do we improve the way that we appraise people, how do we help people develop and grow and all that kind of stuff. And that's really what your kind of remit was, to take these values and say, okay, how do we, everyone says they believe in them, everyone does believe in them, but how do we make sure that we're actually living them?
And I think that's the refreshing part of working with SMEs is it's not a tick box exercise. It's their business. Normally it is somebody's business. It is more important to them than a CEO of a large organisation. They built this. They've from the very first day they've been a part of it. So coming in, and I think we had the conversations, we can do it. HR people can do all them things. It's not going to make your business better. It's not going to grow your business. And I think also, regardless of whoever's in the business, with the values will remain within there, and then they may evolve over time. But right now, it's a really good thing for us to work together. And then the next stage, which we came up together, we brought the values down, which were be proactive, support and challenge, support and challenge, be proactive, own it, be cunning, and then the other one that we had, be better, and they were really important. So that's how we had all this information. We then put it into the 5 values, and actually the overrunning one was to be cunning around the fox and everything else. So that was great. It looked great, visually looked great. You'd expect that from you'd hope so. You guys, in terms of your marketing, creative business, which you are, and it looked great. So it was a bit like, so what? So what's the next thing? So we then sort of set about giving the guys a project, a challenge.
And I think this was the real sort of light bulb moment for me when I realised this is how we're going to make this be real. Because a lot of the time when you're doing work for clients, so you are limited by the budget they have. You're limited a bit by the scope and the vision of what they want to produce, and you don't always, like as an agency, everyone knows that you don't always get to produce the thing that you liked the most. A lot of the time you have to produce the thing that the client liked the most, or the thing that's right for the customer, or whatever else. So we sort of developed this idea of an entirely fictional brief, which allowed complete freedom for the team, and took them completely out of their comfort zone. It wasn't stuff they'd done previously. It was all, a lot of it involved bits that they were strong at, and then bits that they'd never done before. So it meant they had to learn new things. They had to try stuff out and push people outside their comfort zone and get people talking to other people that they maybe had never.
And I think, and again, the driver behind the project was the values and bringing the values to life. So, regardless of where they played within the business in terms of whatever role they had, they were all on a level playing field, and it was about each week somebody ran the business or ran the project. They fed back differently. They all had different parts of it, and they came back to ourselves. So James played the part of the client. So they had a budget, they had a brief, and then it was like, go figure it out. And that was okay, what do we do? And they had a deadline of the 6th of December. So then have this completed and finished. So the great thing about that was it wasn't us saying, let's go and build a raft in wherever we are, the local waterway is.
Nice, Sail water park.
Yeah, the sun's come out now, so we can maybe do that for the summer. But it was very much about, we gave them a brief, we gave them the values, and we said, right, go figure it out. What does that actually mean to you? So really interesting to see how that evolved over time, and more than anything, they reported back in terms of how the project was gone, but also very much about how they've been living the values. And it automatically, they started to think differently about each other, as well as not just the project. So, be better. They would come back and say, we've done this part, but then somebody said, well, actually, it could be better.
Yeah.
And they started to challenge each other. They challenged each other to be better, but they also supported them. So it really, I think, out of all the projects around values that I work with clients, this was the one that galvanised everyone really quickly and actually had a real impact.
It was also really good for me, from my point of view, because it helped me fight my tendency to be a bit of a helicopter manager. It stopped me from, diving in, fixing it all, saying this is how I think it should be done, irrespective of whether that's right or wrong, and then clearing off again, or people coming to me and asking questions and saying, can we do this, can we do that? It was good to take me away from the process, and I think that was a really valuable and really useful thing to do.
So, and I think also we gave the team different options to lead at different times, to learn new skills. So it was really, really valuable. So as the values then sort of came alive, you could actually see there'd be a change in terms of how they worked, and then brought that back into their day-to-day. So the upside from the client point of view was they were asking questions like, well, could this be better? And and were they being proactive rather than waiting? And they were the small changes that started to happen. So the project was great. They kind of wrapped that up, and then I suppose it was then getting into the reality of what we do.
So that's great, isn't it? So you've got the situation where now you've done a project where you had pretty much free reign, not an unlimited budget, but you had pretty clear creative freedom to do whatever you liked. And now you've got your client work, now you've got your day-to-day, everything else you've got to do. And we're all busy, and everyone's got loads of stuff to do. So how do you make sure that people stay on top of that and sort of build those habits?
Yeah, I think, well, for me, one of the things that we implemented into the business was an appraisal. Quite simple, and if anyone's done an appraisal, the format's the same pretty much wherever you go. But where it really kept that momentum going was that I would have, without you actually, mini updates with them on a weekly basis. So how are you getting on? Let's talk about the values, and start to really sort of question and support the guys in terms of, well, how can you be more proactive about that? How can you challenge? How can you support each other? And that's what's really, it takes time to do it. And we've had a review recently with the team, and each week you can see that the values are coming in, and it's not a forced point. It's more of if you actually use the values around what you're trying to do, it will actually improve what you're doing anyway. But because they've all bought into it, when someone actually calls somebody else out on something, it's not because they're calling them out. It's because they're actually saying, well, actually, this is what we created. It wasn't what you created; it's what they created with you, and that's where it really starts to come alive. And we're now nearly 2 months into the objectives and the reviews. But again, it's focusing on them in terms of getting them to develop as much as them as a team as well. So that and everyone picks up at different stages. But that's how I bring it around. Otherwise, we could have gone, great project, guys. Looks great on the wall. We'll see you in December.
Yeah, crack on. We'll see you in 6 months. We'll do another review.
Yeah. Put something on the website.
Yeah, that's it. And I think that was the thing for me, is it's about the act of continually reviewing, continually making sure that we're getting better all the time. Not that the month before review season, everyone suddenly
mad panic.
Goes crazy and stays late and does all sorts of extra stuff, and then it's like, I can't, then it creates a consistent environment of improvement and growth, and ultimately for me it's all about knowing that people, it helps with make sure people are being supported as well, so they're getting the support they need, and they're doing their learning that they need to do, and all that kind of stuff as well. If they're too busy, they've got a chance, they've got an opportunity to shout up, and having you, I think, is a great thing to be able to. It's having somebody a bit separate. Again, in a small business, it is all very personal. It's all very close, and everyone's like on top of each other a little bit. And so having someone else that you can come into, I worry that you turn into camp counsellor sometimes, but
but that's just for you.
Yeah, that's for me mainly. Yeah.
No, but I totally agree, and I think and it does, and the values when they really are, and they are starting, it is happening. When the values are working, it works both ways. So I've seen that the guys have started to ask you for stuff. And part of the support and challenge, be proactive, is James said he would get something done. James is super busy and he hasn't done it. I said, don't let James get away with it. The one thing you want to do is, get James to do it. So shout out and say, hey James, this is really important to me. Can you do it? Right, yeah, no problem. And that's kind of getting them to work as a whole team, rather than it just being, well, I can't do that because we're busy.
Yeah.
And again, working in the offices like I do, so I'm coming once a week. But you can actually start to hear the way that they, with clients on the phone, and in terms of that change, they start to want to be better, want to improve, and want to drive it, but it becomes natural rather than forced.
Yeah.
And that's where I think when you put it in an objective, you put it on a piece of paper and say, this is what you have to do, versus it becomes a natural thing because they've created it.
Yeah. And
again, when they challenge each other, it's that team that's created the values.
Yeah.
It's not come from anywhere else.
These are they belong to everyone that's here, and as we employ new people, they will need to meet those values, and that's when it becomes a bit more less of a you come in and we shape the company around everyone that's here. It's more that you come in and you live those values, and if you don't, then you probably won't come in the first place. That's kind of how it works, because it wouldn't be appropriate. You wouldn't enjoy it. That's kind of how.
And I think that's when we recruit, it's not only on the technical ability of the individual or the talent that comes through. It's really about, this is really important to us. So give us an example of when, but a real example of that, and that's about how do you get that? How do they live them same values? And I think you also attract the right talent by having your own values, because people, actually, I quite like the idea of that. That kind of fits with my own personal values versus no, not for me.
Just
thank
not,
you.
Not for me.
Don't come if you've got an office dog.
If you've got if you want an office dog, this is not the place.
It's not one of our values.
It's not. No, actually, one of our values is no office dogs. Yeah. We don't like. I know that is just one of my values. Yes. But okay, so I think this is that covers a great way of getting the values to be lived by the team.
Yeah.
Another one of my it's one of my favourite subjects to talk about on this podcast is how you motivate people. We talked a lot. We talked to the guys from MMU. We talked to some of the students. I think again it would be great to get your perspective on this kind of thing, because now I came up. When I'm incredibly old, so when I came up, when I was starting out my career, it was very much a more stick than carrot.
Yeah.
You were living in fear of getting fired.
Yeah.
Not like I certainly didn't feel like I was entitled to my job or entitled to a pay rise or a promotion or anything like that, or really any sort of benefit. I was happy to be working in marketing, and I was glad that I've been able to achieve that. Yeah. So that was just the way it was, and it was perfectly normal, and I didn't begrudge it, because that was just the way it is. Yeah. And I was talking to somebody else the other day who said that this is an inherent problem with people of this generation that went through that process where they had the boss from hell. It was a miserable experience. They then went off and set up a business for themselves, and they made sure they didn't repeat those mistakes.
Yeah.
So they made sure that they had a nurturing environment where it was comfortable, where people were looked after, where they, where we had. I never had an HR person in any of those jobs, but we have a person that people can talk to make sure that they're being looked after and developed and all that kind of stuff. But then you couple that with a very different generation than the generation that I grew up in. And people, there is more of a sense of the people that expect a certain level of something from their employer. They do expect to be treated a certain way. They expect certain rights, which is not, probably is the right thing, but it is very different. So,
absolutely. And I think from a generation change, probably when we came to our first roles, etc., you didn't really know a huge amount about the world of work. You had probably your parents or your uncles, your aunties, or whoever, or the people, your neighbours, but you didn't really know about the wider world, to be honest. You didn't Google it, you didn't see what else was like. You saw newspapers and everything else, but I'm really old now, don't we? But there wasn't kind of that expectation of other stuff to measure against. So how do you motivate people? Apart from the obvious in terms of what's your own individual motivation, financial, etc., etc. But that's within certain budgets. For me, I think the shift is making people feel part of something, making people grow something. So, like we have here, we're involved in growing the business. We're involved in the decisions around the business. People are asked for their input. People are asked for ideas, and they actually feel part of something rather than it being a turn up to work and go home. And I think that's for me, that's the motivation that makes a difference, rather than it being, you can pay somebody that can still hate working there, but actually if you enjoy working because it's enjoyable work, and the people you work with you have a shared value, or you have shared thoughts, and you it's not everyone gets along, because we don't always get along. I mean, and that's part of challenging each other. But for me, I think it's about that. There's a shared goal, a shared driving force in terms of what's next. How can I grow with the business as it grows? But yeah, it's a different generation in terms of they have a wider view of the world in terms of what's out there.
Yeah.
And I think that's what lots of these marketing companies make things look lovely in terms of the values and everything else, because it looks great from the outside. The reality of when you go and work there, it might be a different story.
Experience, yeah, and I think that's something that I think there are a lot of businesses that are now realising that they can't operate the way they always operated. The sort of terrorism management of making everyone live in fear just isn't going to work anymore, because those people just ain't going to deal with it. They're just not, and it's like, at first it's a bit like, well, I work, all these hours and whatever else, and was scared for my job and everything like that.
Wasn't right.
It wasn't right, was it? No, it was flipping stupid. It was like, I shouldn't have done that. I should have been like, no, this is not the right way to behave. This is, inappropriate. But now the companies are realising, no, we have to look after people. We have to make sure that people are, grown and get better.
And I think, in terms of, people want people to be authentic. They want a real story. They want to see what it's actually really like. So the best way to do that is through your people. The best way to do it is through getting them to say what it's like to work here, rather than it being this is what it looks like from the outside, and it's a brand or whatever it may be. Brands are really important.
Yeah, but that is your brand.
But that's the brand. That's your employer brand, isn't it?
And that, I think, takes us full circle, doesn't it? That ultimately, that was the biggest realization for me, is that if the people aren't aligned with the vision and the and the values ultimately of the company, then the brand just falls to pieces. It's not authentic, because it's so much more than just a logo on the wall. It's what people say about you. It's what your employees say about you, and the work that you do and everything. And if that's not all aligned, it does all fall to pieces.
And it just becomes work then. It's nothing else. It's just, I come, you pay me, I leave, and that's it. But to grow a business successfully over a long period of time, that's where I think that the values are so important. And I think when you start off with a project with a new client from a HR point of view, you start to say things like, values are so important. Once you've got the values in place, you'll really understand it. And a bit like maybe we had a conversation like, that sounds great, but what does it actually mean, and what happens after we've done this? And we're still very much early days, but you can see the shift and the change with the team, and it's a team rather than it being individuals, and that's where for me the values are so important, if not the most important part of a business, because it drives everything else comes off it. How we do things, how we don't do things. Excellent.
Fantastic.
Thank
Thank
you
you very much. Thank you, Paul, for sharing some of your time with us today. I hope that was of interest to everybody that was watching or listening to us ramble on for a little while. I think I can't really overstate how much of a change having those values in place has made from my point of view, and hopefully for the rest of the team as well. And I think that's what I would implore anyone who thinks, values. What do they really do? Are they really intangible? Are they just are they just a decal for the meeting room? Really make sure that you co-create those with your team. Make sure that the people that work there have a part in their creation, because that's how they'll succeed or fail. Because if you just go top down, these are my values, I'm launching them today, it won't succeed. No. They will fail.
Absolutely. Cool. Great.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. Until next time, see you soon.
See you soon.
It's like a cool move, isn't it? That's like a cool move that the kids do.
Don't think we're cool.
When they're in the
we're far
when they're throwing shapes in the dance hall.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
I don't think I ever threw any shapes. I think I tried to.
I could see the shape move.
No. I tried to avoid shape throwing wherever possible. I just sort of sat around and chatted. I wanted to be in ideally a quieter place where there's no music and no noise.
The cave.
Yeah, like a cave. Yeah, like a cave. I like to chat to my mates and just sort of talk about what's going on.
Yeah. Not
too loud, not too busy. I was sort of basically always in my late 30s, I think.
Constantly.
At all times, yeah. Now it's just fine. I'm like,
no, you've kind of reached that age.
I've arrived. I think I'm worried it's going to get worse now as I progress towards 40.
That makes a lot of sense, James.
Indeed.